Some children grow up believing their parents will always be proud of them. I grew up trying to earn a kind word that never came. My name is Ethan Brooks, and for as long as I can remember, I was my father's greatest disappointment. My older brother, Daniel, was the golden child, straight, a student, football captain. Later, he became a successful corporate lawyer, exactly the kind of son my father had always wanted. Every family gathering became another opportunity to celebrate Daniel's latest promotion, expensive car, or luxury vacation. Then there was me. I wasn't interested in suits, boardrooms, or six-figure salaries. I wanted to serve my country. The day I announced I had enlisted in the Army, my father looked at me as though I'd confessed to committing a crime. "You just threw your life away," he said, pushing back from the dinner table. "It's what I want to do, Dad. What you want doesn't matter. Smart men build companies. Desperate men carry rifles." Mom stayed silent. Daniel smirked. That silence hurt almost as much as Dad's words. From that day on, every conversation ended in disappointment. "When are you going to get a real career? When are you going to stop embarrassing this family? You'll never amount to anything." I stopped trying to convince him otherwise. Basic training was the hardest thing I'd ever experienced. Endless miles, sleepless nights, bruises. Exhaustion, moments when every muscle begged me to quit. But every time I thought about giving up, I remembered my father's voice telling me I would never succeed. Instead of breaking me, those words became fuel. Years passed. I served in difficult assignments across the world. I missed birthdays, Christmas mornings, weddings, and funerals. I celebrated holidays in tents instead of living rooms. My brothers in arms became my second family because they understood sacrifices my own family never appreciated. Whenever I came home on leave, nothing changed. Dad barely looked at my uniform. "So, still doing that Army thing?" He'd ask. "Yes, sir, hum." That was usually the end of the conversation. Meanwhile, Daniel could mention a business deal, and Dad would spend an hour bragging about him to anyone who would listen. I eventually stopped expecting anything different. Then came the mission that changed my life forever. Our platoon had been escorting humanitarian aid through hostile territory when everything exploded. The first blast threw our lead vehicle into the air. Gunfire erupted from every direction. Smoke swallowed the road. Men shouted for medics. For several terrifying seconds, chaos ruled everything. Training took over. Ignoring the bullets striking nearby, I sprinted toward the overturned vehicle. One soldier was trapped inside while flames spread across the engine. There wasn't time to think, only time to act. I forced open the damaged door with another soldier's help. Together, we pulled two wounded teammates free before the vehicle erupted into flames. Then I heard another cry. A young medic had been pinned behind shattered debris, exposed to enemy fire. Without hesitation, I ran back. Every instinct screamed that it was suicide, but leaving him behind wasn't an option. I dragged him to safety while covering him with my own body as bullets struck the pavement around us. Reinforcements finally arrived, ending what felt like an eternity. 3 soldiers survived that day because someone refused to leave them behind. Months later, after countless interviews and official investigations, my commanding officer called me into his office. He closed the door and smiled. "Specialist Brooks, congratulations." "For what, sir?" "You've been selected to receive the Silver Star." I sat there speechless. The Silver Star, one of the nation's highest military honors for valor in combat. I don't know what to say. "Say you'll bring your family," he replied warmly. They deserve to witness this. For the first time in years, hope flickered inside me. Maybe this would finally make my father proud. Maybe this medal would erase years of disappointment. I mailed formal invitations to everyone in my family. Mom, Dad, Daniel, my grandparents, even distant relatives. A week later, my phone rang. "Dad," I answered with a smile. "Hi, Dad." His voice was cold. "I got your invitation. I really hope you'll come." There was a long silence before he finally spoke. "I'm not wasting my time sitting through some military ceremony." My heart sank. "Dad, you chose this life against my advice." I thought maybe he cut me off. "No, you're this family's biggest shame." The line went silent. He had already hung up. I stared at the phone in disbelief, the invitation lying on my kitchen table beside my freshly pressed dress uniform. In that moment, I realized something heartbreaking. No medal, not even the Silver Star, could earn the respect of a man who had already decided I would never be enough. Yet, despite the pain, I still folded my uniform with care. If my own father wouldn't stand beside me on the proudest day of my life, I would stand tall anyway for the brothers who had fought beside me, and for the honor they believed I deserved. The morning of the Silver Star ceremony arrived with a crisp autumn breeze that carried both pride and anxiety. I had imagined this day hundreds of times during sleepless nights overseas. In every version of that dream, my father sat in the front row, wearing the same proud smile I had spent my entire life chasing. Reality was much different. As I adjusted my army dress uniform in the mirror, the Silver Star ribbon already pinned above my heart, I caught my own reflection staring back. The polished medals, the neatly pressed jacket, and the sharp salute. Worthy appearance couldn't hide the ache behind my eyes. My phone remained silent, no good luck, no congratulations, not even a simple text from my parents or my brother. I took a deep breath and drove to the military base alone. The ceremony hall was magnificent. American flags lined both sides of the stage, while rows of chairs quickly filled with military families. Proud parents embraced their sons and daughters. Children waved tiny flags. Wives straightened their spouses' uniforms before taking family photos. Everywhere I looked, people celebrated together. I couldn't help glancing toward the section reserved for my guests. Every seat was empty. The 4 chairs with my family's name remained untouched. For a moment, I considered asking an usher to remove the reserved sign. Seeing those empty chairs hurt more than any battlefield wound ever had. A familiar voice interrupted my thoughts. "You must be Specialist Brooks." I turned to find an elderly woman smiling warmly. She wore a gold star mother pin on her jacket. "My son served with your unit," she said. "He told us about what you did that day. Because of your courage, his best friend came home alive." Before I could answer, she wrapped me in a gentle hug. "I'm proud of you." Those 4 simple words nearly broke me. Minutes later, several members of my platoon arrived. Some still carried scars from the mission that had changed all our lives. Sergeant Ramirez grinned. "Looks like your family couldn't make it." I forced a smile. "They're busy." He glanced at the empty seats before placing a hand on my shoulder. "Then we'll be your family today." One by one, every member of my unit filled the empty row. Captain Lewis sat beside Sergeant Ramirez. Corporal Jenkins took another seat. The medic whose life I had saved occupied the chair that had been reserved for my father. Without saying a word, they erased the emptiness. For the first time that day, I smiled honestly. The ceremony began with the national anthem. The commanding general stepped to the podium. "Today, we recognize extraordinary courage under impossible circumstances." He described the ambush in remarkable detail. He spoke about the explosions, the relentless gunfire, the burning vehicle. Then he described how one soldier repeatedly ran back into danger to rescue wounded teammates despite overwhelming enemy fire. Each word brought those terrifying memories rushing back. When he finally spoke my name, the audience rose to their feet. "Specialist Ethan Brooks." The applause echoed throughout the hall. I marched forward, every step steady despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm me. The general pinned the Silver Star onto my uniform. Looking directly into my eyes, he quietly said, "Your country is grateful." Then he saluted. I returned the salute with absolute precision. The audience erupted once more. As I turned toward the crowd, my eyes instinctively searched for my father. The seat remained occupied by the young medic whose life I had saved. He smiled proudly. In that moment, I realized something unexpected. Maybe family wasn't defined by blood. Maybe it was defined by the people who stood beside you when it mattered most. After the medals were presented, the Master of Ceremonies invited me to say a few words. I stepped behind the microphone. For several seconds, I simply looked around the room. I spent a long time believing that bravery meant never being afraid. I began. I was wrong. The bravest people I've ever known were terrified, but they refused to abandon the person standing beside them. The room became completely silent. This medal doesn't belong only to me. It belongs to every soldier who risked everything that day. It belongs to the medics who refused to quit. It belongs to the families who waited at home. And it belongs to every service member who chose duty over comfort. I paused, taking a slow breath. There are people who measure success by money, titles, or status. I've learned that success is measured by the lives you protect and the people who would risk everything to protect you. I looked toward my platoon, my brothers and sisters in uniform. Thank you for becoming the family I needed when I felt alone. Many of them wiped away tears. The audience rose once again in a standing ovation. Unknown to me, a local journalist had recorded the entire speech on her phone. By that evening, the video was spreading across social media. Millions watched a decorated soldier accept one of the nation's highest honors with humility instead of bitterness. The comments poured in, praising not only the courage shown on the battlefield, but also the grace shown in the face of personal heartbreak. Back in my hometown, people recognized my name. Neighbors who had known my family for years began asking the same question. How could any father call a Silver Star hero this family's biggest shame? For the first time in my life, the truth was no longer hidden behind closed doors, and my father's words were about to catch up with him. 3 months after the Silver Star ceremony, I returned to my hometown for the first time in nearly 2 years. The city looked exactly as I remembered, the old brick buildings lining Main Street, the coffee shop where my friends and I had spent countless afternoons after high school, and the park where my father had once taught Daniel to throw a baseball while I watched from the sidelines. Some memories never faded, but something else had changed. People recognized me as I stepped into a local diner. For breakfast, conversation stopped for a moment. A waitress smiled warmly. "You're Ethan Brooks, aren't you?" The Silver Star recipient. I nodded, slightly embarrassed. She refused to let me pay for my meal. My husband served overseas. She said, placing the receipt back on the table. "Thank you for bringing him home safely." Breakfast is on us. It happened again at the hardware store, then at the gas station. Everywhere I went, strangers thanked me. Ironically, I was receiving more kindness from complete strangers than I had ever received from my own father. The town council had organized a Veterans Appreciation Day parade in my honor. The mayor planned to present me with the city's Medal of Honor for community service, recognizing not only my military bravery, but also the charity work I'd quietly supported for wounded veterans after returning home. I hadn't asked for any of it. I simply accepted because the event would raise money for military families. 2 days before the ceremony, my phone rang. The caller ID read, "Dad." I stared at the screen for several seconds before answering. "Hello." His voice sounded unusually calm. "Ethan, we should talk." I remained silent. "I've been thinking." "About what?" "Everything." He cleared his throat. "I may have been too hard on you." The words felt unfamiliar coming from him. Not quite an apology, but closer than I'd ever heard. "I see. The town keeps talking about you," he continued. "People won't stop mentioning that speech." I said nothing, then came the real reason for the call. "I've been invited to the Veterans Day celebration." That surprised me. "I'd like to stand beside you." There it was. Not "I'd like to make things right," not "I'm sorry," not "I was wrong." He wanted to share the spotlight. "The newspaper wants family photos," he continued. "It would look good if we appeared together." Look good. Those 2 words told me everything. He wasn't calling because he regretted losing his son. He was calling because he regretted losing his reputation. "I'll think about it," I replied before ending the conversation. That evening, I visited my grandmother. She had always loved me quietly, even when standing up to my father seemed impossible. As soon as she opened the door, she wrapped me in a long embrace. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. We spent hours talking over home-made apple pie. Eventually, she sighed. "You deserve to know something." I looked up. "What is it?" She hesitated before speaking. "Your father wasn't always this way." "What do you mean?" "When you were born, he adored you." I frowned. "Then why did everything change?" She looked toward an old family photo hanging on the wall. "Because of fear." "Fear?" She nodded slowly. Your grandfather served in the military. I know. He never came home. I stared at her. What? He was killed in combat when your father was only 12. The room suddenly felt smaller. No one ever told me. Your father never wanted anyone to know how deeply it affected him. She wiped away a tear. When you joined the army, all he could see was another person he loved walking toward danger. I struggled to process her words. So, he hated my career because he was afraid. She shook her head, at first. Then why call me a shame? Her expression grew sadder. Because instead of admitting he was terrified of losing you, he chose anger. Pride became easier than vulnerability. For years, I had believed my father despised me simply because I wasn't successful enough. Now I realized the truth was more complicated. Fear had turned into bitterness. Bitterness had turned into cruelty. But understanding someone's pain didn't erase the damage they caused. The next morning, I received another surprise. Daniel knocked on my hotel room door. He looked nothing like the confident golden child I remembered. His expensive suit had been replaced by wrinkled clothes. Dark circles rested beneath his eyes. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. I folded my arms. For what? For everything. He lowered his head. I let Dad compare us for years because it benefited me. He admitted that his prestigious law firm had quietly fired him months earlier, after he mishandled several major cases. To protect the family's image, Dad had hidden the truth from everyone while continuing to boast about Daniel's success. I wasn't the perfect son, Daniel confessed, his voice cracking. I was just the one Dad protected. For the first time, I saw not a rival, but another victim of our father's impossible expectations. As Veterans Day approached, the truth about our family was finally coming into the light. And my father was about to learn that respect could never be reclaimed through photographs, speeches, or public appearances. It had to be earned. Veterans Day arrived beneath a cloudless blue sky. Main Street had been transformed into a celebration of service and sacrifice. American flags fluttered from every storefront, marching bands rehearsed patriotic songs. And hundreds of residents lined the sidewalks hours before the parade began. Families held handmade signs that read, "Welcome home, heroes," and "Thank you for your service." I had spent years believing this day would never come, not because of the recognition, but because I had finally found peace within myself. The applause, the medals, and the newspaper headlines no longer mattered as much as they once would have. I had already won the battle that counted. I no longer needed my father's approval. Backstage, the event coordinator approached me. "Mr. Brooks," she said with a smile, "we're ready for the family photograph before the ceremony." Before I could answer, my father appeared. He wore his finest suit and walked toward me with a confident smile, as though the painful years between us had never happened. "Ready?" he asked. "Let's show everyone how proud this family is." I looked into his eyes. For the first time in my life, I wasn't searching for acceptance. I was searching for honesty, Dad. I said calmly, "Before we take any photographs, there's something you need to understand." His smile faded. "You weren't there." "What?" "You weren't there when I graduated basic training." He looked away. "You weren't there when I deployed." Silence. "You weren't there when I came home after losing friends." His shoulders stiffened. "And you weren't there on the day I received the Silver Star." People nearby stopped talking. No one interrupted. I continued, my voice steady. "I invited you because I wanted my father beside me. But you chose not to come." He opened his mouth, but no words appeared. I can't pretend those years never happened simply because people are watching. The event coordinator quietly stepped back, sensing this wasn't her conversation. My father lowered his head. "I know I failed you." It was the first genuine admission I had ever heard from him. "I thought if I pushed you hard enough, you'd choose a safer life. You didn't push me." I replied softly. "You pushed me away." A tear rolled down his cheek. "I'm sorry." Those two words had taken nearly 20 years to arrive. For a moment, I considered all the anger I had carried. Every insult, every comparison, every birthday he barely acknowledged, every achievement he ignored. I realized something important. Holding on to hatred would only continue the pain he had started. The announcer called my name. It was time. I walked onto the stage as thousands of people applauded. The mayor presented me with the city's award before inviting me to speak. I stepped to the microphone. I've been asked many times what courage looks like. I smiled gently. It isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to do what's right despite fear. I paused before continuing. I also want to thank the people who stood beside me when life became difficult. I motioned toward the front row. My commanding officer, Captain Lewis, stood my platoon. My fellow soldiers rose together, the medic whose life I was fortunate enough to help save. The crowd applauded loudly. And one very special person. Everyone looked around curiously. An elderly woman slowly stood. It was Mrs. Carter, my high school English teacher. Years earlier, when almost no one believed in me, she had encouraged me to apply for leadership programs. She had reminded me that kindness was never weakness. Most importantly, she had told me something I never forgot. Your worth is determined by your character, not by someone else's opinion. I smiled at her. Thank you for seeing value in me long before anyone else did. The audience rose in another standing ovation. Then I spoke the words that would become the headline in every local newspaper the next morning. People often say family is everything. I looked across the crowd before continuing. I believe family is made up of the people who choose to stand beside you, not only during your victories, but also during your struggles. You don't earn that place through blood. You earn it through love. The applause lasted nearly a full minute. When the ceremony ended, reporters rushed forward. To everyone's surprise, I didn't pose alone. I invited my platoon, Captain Lewis, Mrs. Carter, and the families of the soldiers who had served beside me onto the stage. Together, we smiled for the cameras. My father remained quietly in the audience. For a brief moment, our eyes met. There was sadness in his expression, but also understanding. He finally realized what his pride had cost him. Not the applause, not the headlines, not the medals. He had lost years he could never get back with his son. As the crowd dispersed, he slowly walked toward me. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. I nodded. Forgiveness isn't something you ask for once. It's something you earn every day. He extended his hand. Instead, I embraced him, not because the past had disappeared, but because I refused to let it define my future. The sweetest revenge wasn't making my father suffer the way he had made me suffer. It was proving that his words had never determined my worth. His rejection had not broken me. It had shaped me into a man defined by courage, compassion, and integrity. As I looked at the silver star resting on my uniform one last time, I finally understood its greatest meaning. The medal honored bravery on the battlefield, but the greatest victory of my life had happened long after the fighting ended. It was learning that true honor comes not from being accepted by others, but from living a life worthy of your own respect. The end.